And we are being streamed. So, good afternoon, everyone. May I ask for agenda item 1 for nominations for appointment of chair?
I'm happy to nominate for myself for chair if nobody else wants to do it.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Is everybody happy for Judith to be chair? I'm seeing nodding. Thank you very much. Judith, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So item number 2, then, everybody, is appointment of vice chair. So currently David Tunga is vice chair. I believe he is happy to continue as vice chair. Therefore, I will nominate him in his absence, unless anybody else would like to also nominate themselves for vice chair. I think, does that mean, therefore, Kath, that David is able to be vice chair?
Is everybody happy for David to be vice chair? I'm seeing nodding again. Thank you very much.
Marvellous. Okay, then. So, item agenda number 3, apologies for absence. We have 4, I understand.
Yes, Chair, we have John Land, Patricia Lewis, is that Phil Willott?
Yeah.
And David Tungate, as you said, you've said, Sarah.
Okay, then. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Okay, I see no hands up. So moving on to item number 5, then, minutes of the last meeting held on the 24th of June. Okay, so I am presuming by the silence from everybody that everybody's happy with the minutes. Excellent. Moving on then. Item number 6, membership. If we can note the following resignations from Andy Gilbert, Meta Dave and Debbie Simon. We are also asking to approve the appointment of Natasha Kelly as head teacher of Rice Park Primary as a primary maintained representative. Does that need everybody to agree, Kath, or just the maintained primary heads?
Are there any objections? No, that's fine. We can go ahead with those. Thanks, Chair.
Excellent. Okay. So just to note that Forum currently has the following vacancies, and if members can inform the clerk of any volunteers they may be aware of. So we have 2 primary academy posts, 1 secondary academy and 1 early years PVI. Okay, so item therefore number 7 is just to note, and it is the Forum's current constitution to look at discussing and amending if required. Is there, Kath, somebody that is going to talk through this particular paper, or is that me?
No, Chair, that's fine. If you've all read it and you're happy, there are no suggested amendments to take forward. I believe that's it. We can just carry on and note.
Okay, excellent. So can I ask everybody, are you happy with the notes of the current constitution as they are? Okay, I am seeing lots of nods, in which case we are there. Okay, so Moving on quite rapidly then to agenda item number 8. It's the scheme for financing schools. Again, this is just a summary to update forum members on the latest revisions to the scheme of financial fundings. We are not voting, we are just noting the draft scheme for financing schools, which will be sent to all maintained schools for consultation during the autumn. And to note that there are no directed revisions from the DFE for 2025. And also to note that the one-year budget plan submission date remains as of the 1st of May, but the 3-year budget plan submission is now due by the 23rd of June, which is a week later. Previously, it was the 15th of June. So I think that's over to Susan, who may want to talk us through this paper.
Hi, Judith, thank you. You've basically said what I was going to say, so it should be quite a brief item. This is something that comes to Schools Forum annually, and it just has to be agreed. Sometimes DFE will make directive revisions, which they haven't done as yet. Most of the changes are just to align the scheme with the DFE's model scheme. And other than that, that's just the one change regarding the date for 3-year budget plans. I'm sure nobody really wants me to go through that whole paper. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Okay, it looks, Susan, like there are no questions for you. So that item has duly been noted and we can therefore move on. So we are now agenda item number 9, which is the early years update. And that is on page 27 of our pack. So again, there is nothing for forum to vote on, but merely to note the current progress and proposed direction of travel going forwards. So have we got somebody from early years who's going to talk through the paper?
Hello, good afternoon. Yes, Judith, I'm here. Catherine Bouchel again,
Hi,
Head
Catherine.
of Service for Early Years. Hi. Obviously, we've had the papers pre the meeting. I think the things to draw your attention to, as agreed at last Schools Forum, was to just bring you up to date with some of the activity, particularly around what the LA's statutory duties are. And I'm going to talk about the GLD, which is in section 2.6. But I think just to give you some reassurance in terms of participation across the city from all our schools and PVI settings has been quite high. That's in 2.3. Our EYFSP data has increased this year, which is a really positive key message. And I know, out of all of our schools who participate, everybody, with the exception of about 3 schools, attended the moderation training, and it's something that we're committed to continuing to do into next year, and I've put that under the direction of travel. If we go on to, if there's nothing else on page 2, page 3, starting with 2.5, I was asked if we could develop an early years subgroup, which is a reference group that would feed into Schools Forum moving forward. Myself and Finance have developed a new group, which it consists of 12 members with 4 representatives from our maintained primary schools, 2 from trusts, and the rest are from the PVI sector. And we had our first meeting at the beginning of September. They are minuted meetings, and once we meet again to ratify the minutes, in relation to 2.6, you may or may not be aware that every local authority has been issued with a GLD target, good level of development for EYFS. It's an ambitious target, and each local authority has been invited by the DFE to submit why they would want to have a change to that percentage increase. It's a really big percentage increase across Nottingham City. And it's not that we're not aspirational for our children, but we're having to be realistic, particularly when you look at the increase year on year, it equates to about 3%. Thankfully, the DFE did invite us to have a conversation, and the outcome of that will be known but on the 14th of October this year. And we did engage with leaders within our schools as well in relation to what they thought was realistic. And we've got to look across the whole of the city. But it's encouraging that we did engage in that conversation. We're not the only local authority to have had that conversation with the DFE. Within the East Midlands, I understand that 7 local authorities also suggested a revisit of that GLD target, which is ultimately going to affect our schools, but it's also about leading on to the Best Start strategy. It really is important that we have a golden thread of what we offer our children and families in this city, 0 to 5. Our children are tested in relation to their at the end of foundation stage. So what's really important is that journey before the children finish their reception class. With that and the Best Start strategy, we're mindful of what commissioning arrangements we have with our health colleagues, and most importantly, how we can run alongside the EYFS and the Healthy Child Programme, because obviously health are a key player in this target as well. DSG allocation, that's 2.7, working with colleagues in finance to commit to the pass-through rate of 97%. For the paper will be coming to Forum in December, and ultimately it's about staffing infrastructure and making sure that the base rate is aligned across both sectors. So a report will be coming in December, which is my colleague Danny is on the line, and if I'm wrong about December, I'm sure he will let me know. Obviously, we need to do some consultations around the early years local funding formula, and we'll progress that with central finance and, of course, the consultation group, which would be the early years subgroup. If there are any other questions, I'm more than happy to take them. It's just information as was requested at a previous schools forum.
Have we got any other questions for Catherine at all? Okay, thank you very much then, Catherine. Kath, can I just say, somebody just has rung Natasha, apparently from Rise Park, is in the waiting room trying to get in. Thanks. Okay then, so let us move swiftly on. If that's nobody's got anything to ask around early years, to item 10, which is the DSG revenue monitoring. Okay, so again, this is just a summary to update members on the current revenue monitoring forecast for the DSG. And again, we are noting and not voting. I think it is going to be Joe, is it, that will present this?
No, I believe. Sorry, Joe.
Sorry, I believe Danny's with us, and we've got Sarah as well, Danny, who's going to present this item. And good afternoon, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Jo Moxon. I'm the Interim Director of Education Services. So, Danny, over to you.
Thanks, Joe. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm in the role of Strategic Finance Business Partner, and I want to take this opportunity to very briefly introduce that fact and to say, going forward, I'm going to be on a permanent basis supporting Schools Forum. I wouldn't mind just introducing Sarah Triasic, who's with us and is taking forward the financial aspect of our high needs block. And alongside Sarah, you all know Susan Woodland, and you probably already know Pamela Hawtrey, who is also part of our team. So it's good that you know us as the finance team, and we're here to support Claire, Joe, and the service, and through them yourselves. What I'd like to do on the high needs is just hand over to Sarah. Sarah will take you through the paper, and I'm anticipating there might be some questions, so we'll support you with that if that's okay. Sarah, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you, Danny. That was a great introduction. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm just here to talk through the DSG revenue monitoring paper. I'll go through the highlights, but I will pause in certain places, and if there are any questions, then there'll be room for those. And if something we can't answer, then we will take them away as a team and provide a response to forum if we can't do it in this meeting. So the paper, if I just go through the highlights, so the DSG current position by the 4 blocks. So we've got the 162 million of the allocation. We have the schools, central and early years, all forecasting to budget with the pressure that we can see as expected in the high needs in year pressure of 3.6 captured at this particular point in time in July. It's broken down in the familiar format, hopefully that you're all used to seeing. I tried to keep it in line with what you've used to see in previous meetings. So in Annex A, you've got that breakdown if you want to go down into any further detail. And then the remaining blocks are summarised within tables 3.1 to 3.3. Table 3.4 looks at the current DSG reserves with the anticipated balance over the next 5 years, with the cumulative pressures, as we can see, forming from 27-28. And this doesn't take into account any work with the DSG management/recovery plan. I'll just pause there because I said I would pause, and I actually didn't, if there were any questions. No. Okay. The other elements included in the paper are future consults for the schools. So we're looking at the disapplication request coming up for the Building Schools for Future to be treated as PFI, and then the usual annual de-delegated items and the setting of the MFG rate. So just to sort of give you the heads up that these are coming through the system and start thinking about those. And then the other element of the paper is just to look at the schools and revenue balances, currently sitting at 5.74, and we're looking at the forecast to reduce that to 4.69 as we stand currently, with 4 schools returning a deficit position. Again, I'm going to pause because that was all of my highlights, but if there are any questions for me or the team.
You're all very, very quiet on this item. In every authority I've been in, Schools Forum, we normally generate a lot of discussion around high needs, particularly the position. So please do speak up. We're here to try and give you as much advice and guidance and understanding. So please shout up if there's anything that occurs to you. Sorry, Sarah.
That was it from me.
Can I ask a question? So just looking at the high level needs, you can see on the forecast, obviously there's a decline. What's the rationale behind that decline in those reserves, and what's going on in terms of, I'm assuming it must be linked to some capital spending, etc.?
No, it's actually, Jamie, it's linked to demand. And as we look at our demand going forward, and as you'll note from the first table, we highlighted that there's going to be a deficit this year on the high needs revenue account. And that deficit is very much around demand, particularly driven in the case of Nottingham City. It's driven by a number of factors, but not least the exclusion and the consequential cost of how we manage that and support that. When you take that forward a couple of years, we will deplete our current balance. So we have a very positive balance at the moment of 14.5 million. That will come down this year, and without any further intervention, as it says in table in the table in 3.4, by 27-28, we will have a deficit of 4.9 million. And that's a key factor. It is driven by demand. We had a tentative plan at the start of the year that was overtaken by the fact that actually the forecast position at the start of the year was actually more scary, more horrendous. It was forecasting 8.5 million this year. As it was, through the work that Sarah and the team have done, we've actually reviewed and overhauled all of that. And the upshot is that it will be 3 million in this year. But when you then reproject that forward, it still gives us a deficit without intervention to set up a recovery. So, for example, one of the items we had in the original plan was we were going to bring a request for disapplication of about 1.5 million. Now, as heads, that's something that would obviously challenge yourselves in terms of taking 1.5 million out of the schools block and transferring it to the high needs block. I'm flagging that up because where we are currently, we don't need to do that for 26-27. However, if we don't get the recovery in place, we might end up in a position where we have to come to you and request your support for a disapplication as part of the DSG recovery. So in that sense, Jamie, you've asked the right question on the right page. And I do want to emphasize that, yes, it's a challenge for all of us as heads, as it were. And it's a challenge for us on the finance side. And if we work effectively together with the service, we can actually preempt that deficit. What we're hoping to do in a future paper is give you a more positive position going forward. But that will require us to come up with a robust recovery plan, which is taking that original version and overhauling it. I don't know if that makes sense, Jamie.
It does, but I also recall from earlier in the year, there was a working group that was set up together to look at this particular issue. And obviously, I think what's really important is that, obviously, if you've got a forecast like that, we're looking ahead at the impact of some of the strategies that are being put in place to mitigate against the pre-planning of things like spaces. I know at the moment with high level needs, the spaces are at a premium, and that's a real struggle for the city. I think it's across the nation. But obviously, having known that, we need to start looking at what capacity there is, isn't it? And what can be put out, because I'm very aware at the moment in the majority of schools, a lot of the high level needs children are now being educated within mainstream settings. And there is a lack of kind of alternative provision, isn't there? And again, exactly. That causes a strain on all schools, including the special schools as well. So I suppose I'd be very keen to see the working party of where we're going next with that and looking at, because there's lots of plans and things afoot, but we actually now need to see those being pushed through, don't we? And seeing when they're going to come live and make a difference for children's places.
Yeah. And I'm really pleased you've raised the point about the subgroup. From a strategic approach, the plan is to bring that subgroup back together as part of the high needs subgroup approach. So yes, I would be expecting with the service that we would plan to bring the subgroup in, talk through where we are with the elements of the savings recovery plan and share that with the subgroup, and then take on board any discussion or ideas. And we will very much have the challenge of available space and capacity, Jamie. So we'll need to talk through the implications of that and what the plans are, very much so. At this stage, I feel from a finance perspective, we're in a far better place than I think was being advised back in April. So it's a very positive position, albeit there's a deficit coming this year, and there is we will have used up all of our balance. Nottingham City is very unusual in that very few other authorities have a balance on that high need of the scale we do. most other authorities have a deficit, and they're being allowed because of the setting aside of the regulations until April 26. We are allowed to carry the deficit, or authorities are, but we're in a far better position. So we've got a couple of years to make our recovery plan effective, Jamie, and it would be really good to get the subgroup going, because we need to go down into the detail, which I can't do here, obviously.
Hi, Danny.
Hopefully all of that makes sense.
Can I answer? I've had my hand up for a while, actually. And I think
Sorry, Sandra, I didn't see the hand up.
My hand was up, actually. I was in the subgroup, and to be honest, my question was about that. It's good to see the deficit has been reduced. It would be good. I like the fact that the report is nice and clear. It would be nice to have a little bit more of a breakdown about the deficit for the HLN. Like, you don't get a great deal of information from that. Now, I was going to ask if the new sort of proposed inclusion model that has gone out to secondary schools has been included in the forecasting for the HLN for the next few years or not, because I'm guessing it hasn't.
So it hasn't. Obviously, Joe, Claire, you might want to come in on this, but no, it hasn't been included at this stage, Sandra. It's one of the items that's in the draft plan that we've got, and there is an item on the agenda later on around inclusion, so that might pick up some of this. But in terms of the financial, Sarah will have taken a note of your point about you want more detail. We can provide more detail. What I would always be cautious of is overwhelming you with the amount of detail. So what we'll do is we'll add an appendix to this paper going forward. And in the appendix, we'll start to provide some of the details, such as you've just asked for around HLN. And hopefully that will give you the insight. Then the subgroup, obviously, will want to go into more detail again. Hopefully that gives you some clarity. Joe, Claire, I don't know if you want to come in and add anything.
Thank you. Sorry, I can't find the hands up facility, but I've unmuted myself. So thank you, Danny, and colleagues. I hope that's encouraging in some ways for you to see that report and the better grip, if you like, on the finance and a more robust analysis. What's next is to really get underneath those budget lines and find out the real reasons for those that are overspending, and more importantly, the mitigations that we can work on and put in place. Difficult when most of it is around increased demand, and that's what many local authorities are facing, as Danny has said. But there are still things and actions that can be taken, and working in partnership with you all can make a difference to that figure. So whilst we're looking at those and pulling ideas together before we come to the subgroup, hopefully by the time we come to the subgroup, there should be some meat on the bones of that plan with some definite figures that will come back to the next schools forum in a more robust format.
Thank you, Joe. Danny, can I ask a question, please, around we're looking at possibly the reserves being depleted, you're saying, by 27-28, and that need for demand that we've got to look at. If the current proposals that are going forward, and I know it's still, it hasn't gone to government yet, around a change of boundary for the City Council, what effects is that going to have? Planning going forward, number one, on our reserves, on the amount of exclusions from the county, funding coming in, etc., because I just think we do need to start planning that and knowing that as a forum in advance, or as soon as we can. Have you got any figures or ideas on that?
The direct answer and the most honest answer, Judith, is we've done no work on that as yet. We will move on to look at what the most likely boundary changes will be and what the implications of that will be. And we'll be looking most keenly at the DFE plan in terms of the DSG allocations, because in the first instance, if we shift boundaries or add to boundaries, then we'll be looking at the demand out of the additional areas in terms of the high needs element. So we'll have to work closely with neighbours to understand what the demand is in any new boundary areas that we've got. Likewise, we will have to offset that in terms of any boundary changes that suggest we lose any part. But as I say, I'm afraid the honest answer at this stage is we haven't really had time to look at that. All of our time and attention has been focused on overhauling the budget that Sarah and I inherited 21st of July. And we've really been working on that with the service to get that right. And now that we've got that right and we've got it aligned with the underlying demand, then we've got a very powerful, robust model of what our demand is. So as we know the shape of any boundary changes, it'll make it far more straightforward for us to actually model that in. I'm not as, if I'm being totally honest, Judith, I'm not as worried about that as I am about where we are and where we're going to be in 27, 28. I need to bring back to you from a finance perspective, alongside the service, led by the service, we need to bring back to you a plan that says, this is how we are going to avoid a 4.9 million deficit come 27, 28. So whilst I'm apologising for not having the other detail, I'm afraid I'm very clear that I have got a blinkered focus at the moment on working with Claire and Joe and the team on coming up with a plan. And Jamie's point about the subgroup is going to be quite central and critical to that. So when we come back to you in December, we come back to you with a joined up approach that actually gives you a higher degree of confidence of what we're going to do. And then we can move on, Sarah and I and the team can move on to what's the plan for dealing with the reform and the boundary changes or potential boundary changes and what models come out of that. Is that okay, Judith?
That's fine, thanks, Danny. Has anybody else got any questions they would like to ask Danny around this DSG budget paper?
Silence.
Okay, so thank you then, Danny. So next item 11 is around include. This is a presentation I think that's going to be given by Tamsin, and we were sent the slides for that this morning.
Yeah, Tamsin isn't here, so I'm going to do the presentation instead. Hi everyone, I think I've met most of you before, but I am Jennifer Hardy. I'm the Interim Head of Access to Learning in Education. It's really important, I think, that we bring this here because you have to bear with me. I don't normally use Zoom, so I'm going to try and share my screen. Because what I'm about to talk you through, I did actually come out of the Schools Forum subgroup that lots of you committed your time to. It was really, really useful to have your involvement. Can everybody see the screen? Thank you. So I think obviously the Schools Forum subgroup has sort of been paused while we've had a bit of change of leadership in the finance team. And as Danny has said and introduced you to people who are here now, we will get that back up and running. But when we ran it over the course of the sort of summer term, the focus a lot was on exclusions and how to prevent exclusions. And a lot of what has come to fruition with the new Include service came out of that conversation. So I just thought it would be really useful to feed that back to you and share that update with you. I'm going to try and move my screen now. There you go. So in terms of a summary around exclusions, obviously there's been quite a lot of conversation about exclusions, and we've historically had really, really high rates of exclusion. In the 24-25 academic year, last academic year, we did see a reduction in exclusion rates for the first time in a long time, which is a really positive picture, particularly in years 9 and 10. Although primary children with SEND being permanently excluded from school continues to be a concern and continues to be a risk for us. This is the permanent exclusion data comparing us with national rates and East Midlands rates, and it's for the 23-24 academic year because it's the last full year that we have national comparison data. We are the green column, no, we're the orange column, and we are, oh no, why am I colourblind? We're the blue column on this, I've tried every single colour. We're the blue column, we're 50% higher than the rate of exclusion in the East Midlands and in England, which for the 23-24 academic year, which you will be aware of. And this is the graph that I am delighted to see. So we had an overall reduction in permanent exclusions across primary and secondary, with the most significant reduction in secondary exclusions. We've also had a really, really good start to the year as well compared to last academic year. So we've had 9 exclusions so far this year compared to 19, which I think is a really, really positive picture as well. And I think it's really important that we share that with you, because I know it's down to a lot of the hard work from people around the table and across schools in the city as well. So this presentation is about Include. Now, I think a number of you will have seen this presentation before, so I will go through it quite quickly. The slides are available on the agenda as well. So the Include service aims to reduce the number of children who are permanently excluded from school, but also reduce suspensions and improve attendance across schools. It's an amalgamation of the previous behaviour support team and the Routes to Inclusion team, and comprises of key services such as universal provision and support and training for schools, a suite of early intervention assessment and tools, a referral process to receive targeted intervention for pupils at risk of exclusion, multi-agency pre-exclusion panels, and task force intervention for pupils at imminent risk of exclusion, as well as reintegration support for pupils returning to mainstream school and transition support for vulnerable pupils moving to secondary school. So a lot of these elements were picked up by the behaviour support team and the Routes to Inclusion team previously, but we've added a lot of other elements in, all of which came out of the discussion that we had at the Schools Forum subgroup, particularly the multi-agency pre-exclusion panels and the task force approach, greater support for reintegration and much greater support for transition of pupils. So it's a bit of a you said, we did, and that's why I think it's really important that we share this approach with you. These are the different stages mapped out. So step 1 to 3 to 5, and you can see with universal provision sort of being the overarching aim of the service. Step 1 and step 2 are led by schools. So this is where you would begin to become curious about the reasons for behaviour in a child who you're becoming aware of and becoming concerned of in step 1. And step 2 is really the replacement of the Routes to Inclusion team. So the whole suite of documents, intervention support and advice will continue to be available and will be refreshed and training, and that's step 2. Step 3 is the targeted intervention, and this sort of replaces what used to be the work of the behaviour support team. Only now you would submit a triage, a referral form which would be triaged, and cases will be reviewed before they get picked up by the team, just to try and sort of streamline the number of cases that need to be worked with by the team and where we can sort of signpost you to other support or other suggestions. Step 4 are the pre-exclusion panels. So this is a multi-agency panel with school representation and representation from teams within the local authority and external partner agencies. We had the first trial panel last week, and it was definitely a learning curve in terms of us and the format that we were following. But we're going to continue to trial them and find the best sort of way to streamline the process, but we've had really, really good engagement with that so far. And then step 5 is the Include Task Force, which replicates some of the more intensive elements of Routes to Inclusion, where you have more multi-agency support with different teams and internal and external partners as well. And this is the stage that we are sort of still developing, and it's the end of the Include process. We're also working really, really closely with our colleagues at Raleigh Education Trust to support pupils to become reintegrated back into mainstream school, but to really ensure that those reintegrations are effective. And the team have been working with Raleigh already. They've been in the school, and the approach is that they will get to know the pupils in school on site at Deanwood, or if they're in alternative, or if they're in external alternative provision, before they would then be considered for reintegration. Then they would work with them through the whole reintegration process, to ensure we get better longer term outcomes for excluded pupils, but also to continue to reduce the burden on the high needs budget. And transition is the next phase, really. So we've had a transition project running here in the past that was funded by the Department for Education, and we're looking to add some more capacity to that team and to that area, and to really drive and coordinate transition more effectively, to ensure that children that are at risk are identified right at the start of Key Stage 2, really. Facilitate better information sharing between schools through the transition portal. So this is just what we're working with at the moment. So in the autumn term, which is now, the team are currently not taking referrals because we're setting up some of the other processes, but they are working with a pre-identified cohort of children, particularly children in year 7 and year 10 who've been identified as being at risk of exclusion, or children that we're aware of. And they're starting to support some reintegration from Unity Academy at the moment. And then from January, schools will be able to refer pupils into the Include service, and we are trialling the pre-exclusion panels every month until the end of the calendar year as well. And that's it. That is on the website and on the agenda slides. So for me, it's just a really big thank you to you all, because you actually gave up an awful lot of time to help us to develop this. And I think once we get the Schools Forum subgroup back up and running, it will be great to sort of continue to harness all of your skills and engagement. So thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Has anybody got any questions about the new service that they would like to ask Jen about before we move on?
Hi, Jen. Have we got any timescales of when the toolkits will be ready for schools? Because that sounds very exciting.
Very pertinent question, Jamie. No, but I will endeavour to find that out for you.
Because I would suggest the sooner rather than later, if it's going to have an impact in the short term.
Very good point. Yes.
Because if it's anything like the R2I, and they're very comprehensive, there'll be a suite of universal toolkits that people can look through, particularly when you refer to universal curiosity. And I think if you're going to be curious, you kind of need to have some grounds of how you're going to be curious, or what you're going to be curious about.
Yeah, I know the team are looking to put it all, what was the former R2I handbook and the R2I website, onto a sort of open website instead of the current format that it's in. It won't be behind a password wall. I know they're also looking to streamline quite a lot of the materials as well. So I will find the timescales and I'll circulate it.
Okay, thank you.
Sandra.
Keep putting my hand up. Jen, I just wanted to say a big thanks for all the work that you did with the support with the group last year. I thought it's really good to see a lot of the things that were talked about in that group in this document. I know you've worked really hard to develop this over the year. I was just interested, as a secondary head, when do we find information about when these pre-exclusion panels are actually taking place?
When the pre-exclusion panels will become part of the graduated process, really. So if you've referred a child in at stage 3 and then you're getting support, and if things still aren't changing, then they will be moved to the pre-exclusion panel. So it's something that you'll be able to request, or it's something that will be suggested to you as at the end of that sort of stage 3 intervention, if you're working with the service.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. I was just going to say the working group worked really hard with Jen, so it is a delight to see this. Judith, just one of the things that you mentioned earlier about the changes in the boundary. My school is right on the edge of the county. And for the last 3 years running, we've had a very high profile Year 7 child that's come in from the county with very little information, who then I have to come to Jen with. So in terms of what that looks like moving forward, could be quite useful as with the transition to secondary school as well.
Right. Thanks, Sandra. Hey, has anybody else got anything else that they would like to add, say, or question about the new Include service? I'm going along my list. It appears you're now free, Jen. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so moving on then to the last item, which is item number 12. It's just to note the meeting date. So our next live streamed meeting is on Tuesday the 9th of December, and then the 13th of January, 28th of April and 23rd of June, which will follow the same format as if there isn't anything for the agenda, the meeting will be cancelled. The only other thing that's been brought to forum is to discuss potentially holding one meeting per academic year face to face at Loxley House instead of live streaming on the internet. Although after a conversation with the chair, I am told that for transparency, all council meetings will be live streamed from January. Therefore, even if we agree to meet in person, that will be a live streamed meeting as well. Has anybody got any views on that, about having a meeting in person rather than online? Okay, deathly silent.
Apologies, I'm just trying to unmute myself. I think meeting in person would be a great thing to do, but if we were to do that, do you think we could get parking at Loxley like we used to be able to get, rather than having to find somewhere to park? There's a massive car park at Loxley that's got nothing in it, as far as I don't know.
Chair, would you like me to answer that?
I would love you to answer that, because I have exactly the same problems, Andy, when I go down to meetings as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it is. It's not something that we can control. It is a pay machine, and there is a charge of minimum of £6 for parking for, I think it's minimum. Is that 4 hours, and then it goes up to £8 for the whole day. It's not something that we can control. But if members wanted to meet at, say, a school somewhere where parking might be available, if it was an informal meeting, that wouldn't be something that governance could help with. But I mean, there is nothing to stop some sort of arrangement. Maybe Joe would like to maybe discuss that a bit later, about a separate meeting of networking. But I'm afraid no. Basically, we can't arrange for parking as much as we'd all like to. We would like to. I'm afraid it's not possible. Sorry. Okay, thanks, Kath. So I guess we said there was nothing to vote about. However, am I taking silence as people want to just stay doing it remotely, or do we need to take a vote?
I think the downside of not having parking and availability, and also if it's going to be live streamed, I agree with Andy, face-to-face meetings are far better, but the practicality of trying to get a big group like this all together, finding car park spaces or available spaces may be a challenge in itself, isn't it? So maybe just ease to have remotely. But I do agree with Andy. I think they're really good when you can have face-to-face meetings. I do remember when we were at Emmanuel together, Andy. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, Jamie. Yeah, indeed.
Absolutely.
Danny.
Yes, Chair. For fear of being hung, drawn and quartered, I think there might be a way. We're talking here about money, and if it's £8 per person, I'm sure we can find that money, and then we need to come up with a practical way of how we get people in. I'd like and I'm probably shooting myself in the foot. I'd like to take that away and ensure it happens. I do think the January meeting face-to-face is absolutely critical, because we will be talking about the DSG allocation, the budget for the year, how it's going to look going forward, the implication from the high need. If we don't do that face-to-face, we lose something, in my experience. So as your advisor and as your strategic finance person, I will find the money's not an issue, and I will find the means of getting the parking at Loxley.
Oh, great, Danny, thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
And my director's going to chop my head off, but I think it's absolutely essential.
Yeah, sorry, can I just jump in?
You can indeed.
Having looked at the agenda, obviously I did check the room availability, and the room that we would need to use for a public meeting isn't available for the January meeting. I have provisionally booked the room when it is available for the December meeting. But I don't know how that fits in with Danny's schedule of what he needs to do.
We can't do in December what we need to do in January, Kath, simply because the DSG allocation doesn't happen until about the 20th of December. We then take that, model it based on all of the consultation and discussion between now and December. We then bring a set of papers to the January meeting, which needs to be face-to-face. I accept the room may not be available. Would it be possible if we moved the time and the slot? And would Schools Forum be happy to consider moving the time slot? For me, we can't not do it face to face. If we do, fine. But it's my role to ensure we get what we need as a Schools Forum. And if it means another school, I'm okay with that as well. I just think we need to do this face to face.
I am more than happy to change the meeting date to do that face to face. I think that's an excellent idea personally, even better now that you're offering to pay for our parking, Danny. I don't know if it is rather than everybody having to go yes or no. Is there anybody who doesn't agree with that? No, okay.
Chair, can I just say that there is no guarantee that you'd be able to get parking space at Loxley. When it's full, it's full. And obviously we have people who have team days, different sections. So although the parking may be paid for, just to let you know that it wouldn't necessarily be guaranteed.
Okay, so can I suggest then, Danny, that we take that away, try and come up with something and inform members rather than just staying on this forum for the sake of it and batting backwards and forwards. And
yeah,
try
it's
and
in
come
danger of going round in a circle, Judy.
It is indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I have one before we just close this meeting. I'm just going to address something that Sandra's put in the chat, which is about suggesting topics for discussion at Schools Forum. We are obviously representatives of lots of head teachers, and it's not just our own show. So Sandra is saying she's concerned that several heads have spoken about BEMH changes and the team around the child meetings. Is there any way that we can bring papers to forum? Is there? I'm out of practice after not being chair for a while. I'm not quite sure what the process is. Do you know the process?
I think if it's to do with Schools Forum spend and legal duties, then it's legitimate. If it's not, then I would suggest that your other forums would be primary heads and secondary heads, as doesn't appear to be a strategic partnership group for the city as yet that is fully representative and includes the council and other partners. So that would be my recommendation, just as someone outside looking in, really. that if it's in with the legal duties and the finance, it's legitimate. If not, then there needs to be another strategic forum in order to explore those issues.
Okay, thanks, Jo. So Sandra, maybe you and I could converse about that, and then I can find out if it is or it isn't, and we can move forward from that. Okay, that's everything on the agenda then, everybody. So thank you very much for attending.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes,
Jennifer Hardy's got a hand up. Sorry, I don't know if you can see that. Sorry,
I can't. It's really tricky trying to navigate. Sorry, Jen.
No, I was just going to say it's good to have you back, Judith. Good chairing.
Thank you very much, Jen.
You're welcome.
Okay then, so shout up if I can't see your hand, but as far as I'm aware, that is everybody. We look forward to seeing you all in December, and thank you. The meeting is now officially closed.
Thank you, Judith.